We'll go ahead and start then. I'll call this meeting to order. First, we'll take a roll call vote or roll call period for attendance.
Lori Woolrab.
Here.
Josh Burnett.
Present.
William Kaisley.
Present.
Chuck Erickson, absent. George Gordon.
Present.
Catherine Metzger. Absent. Susan Schaefer.
Here.
James Soldner.
Here.
John McIntyre.
Here, we currently have 8 members present,
Yes,
one
sir.
absent. We know Member Metzger will be joining us tonight. Welcome Member Woolrab for joining us and filling in as Vice Chair of Land Use and Development Committee today. So we will go ahead and start. I have before you approval of the minutes of May 19th and June 9th. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Member Soldner. Is there a second? Second by Member Gordon. Any comments, additions, or corrections to the minutes? If none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Lori Woolrab.
Aye.
Josh Burnett.
Aye.
William Kaisley. Judge, I can't hear you.
He's looking.
Okay,
Can't find his control.
there we go.
There it is.
Is this the consent agenda?
No, this is the minutes from May
Minutes,
19th.
okay. I lost you for a few minutes.
Is your vote an aye? I think that.
Chuck Erickson is absent. George Gordon.
Aye.
Susan Schaefer.
Aye.
James Soldner.
Aye.
John McIntyre.
Aye. We have majority votes, motion's carried. We'll go on to the report of the executive committee. We have no appearances. Do we have appearances? No appearances, members of the public. I have no appointments or reappointments for this month to present to you. So we're on item 4AC, Information Technologies, request approval of an agreement with MTG to issue an evaluated request for information. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Member Woolrab and a second by Member Barnett. Comments or questions? Member Woolrab.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there's some contradictory language in here concerning travel. And yeah, under B, item B on page 7, this amount, it starts out by saying this amount includes travel related expenses, but then below that, in the paragraph, 2 paragraphs below the little chart, it starts out with MTG. It says MTG has not included any travel costs. So could we get a clarification on that, please?
Please, someone on the staff can clarify for me.
Hi, I did miss that, but I can tell you that Mr. Kalin has expressed to me that all the work will be done virtually anyway. It will be done remotely. There are no travel expenses expected in this.
Or will the language then be changed to take that apparent contradiction out?
I could bring that to stand up as yeah, I could bring that to stand up.
Then I have a follow-up question, if I may. So can you explain, we're getting an RFI for $3,600, but then we're getting a summary for an additional $2,350, and can you explain why we need that additional summary, or that's not something, is that directed toward us, an executive summary type thing, or what is the utility of that?
It's broken into 2 pieces. One is releasing and issuing the RFI. The second part of the summary is the evaluation of the responses that come in, and then delivering that and crafting that into a response for the executive committee and the county board.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Member Schaefer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to propose, and I don't know how we amend this or whatever. I would like to stop after task 1 and have the final RFI be the result, and then not have the summary created. As a member of the work group, I would like to see every single response, and I believe that our work group should be the ones making a summary as to what we're going to do going forward. And so, so on task 1.5, when it says review RFI with the county, I think it's more like the work group, not the county. And then I would like to remove task 2 and then the associated costs with task 2. And I don't know if I have to make a motion to do that,
Yeah.
or to make amendment to that.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion to do that part, please.
So let me clarify, you want to remove on page 7 at the top, task 1.5, review RFI with the county?
No, I would like to revise that to say review the RFI with the work group.
Work group, okay, just exchange words, work group for county on that
Yes.
line?
Yes,
And down under item B on pricing, you want to remove the final RFI summary?
yes, and that's also then removing task 2 above that.
Okay. So you want to remove all of task 2,
Correct,
2.1, 2.2, 2.3,
correct.
correct? And then the final RFI summary, you want to remove that and the cost?
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes,
Okay.
and that would then only be $3,600 then for the RFI, which then we would issue and we would get the responses. And that is what I believe is the proper way to go about this.
So that would be a motion to amend this contract.
Correct.
Is there a second? The motion. Member Metzger, is that a second? All right, thank you. By the way, let the record show Member Metzger is in attendance. Any other discussion? Member Solmer.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear Craig's take on that amendment, if he has a issue with that, or at least his opinion.
Okay, thank you. Member Nelson?
Well, I think that the nice thing about approaching it this way is we still have the option to ask him for evaluation later if we feel we get into a position where we're not clear on something. Mr. Kalin does have experience in the industry that I don't think anyone in our work group has. But I think it depends on what comes in as a result of the RFI as to how comfortable we are with our own evaluation of it. I think we could certainly go back to him and ask for that review at a later date if we reach a point where we think we need to do that.
All right, thank you. Other comments or discussion? I think Member Metzger, you were next, and then Member Gordon.
I would agree with Member Schaefer. I have been involved in multiple RFIs and RFPs, and I have never had a consultant. I've never been involved that we would have a consultant provide a summary. Most individuals in an RFI are certainly capable of reading the responses and determining whether that is an organization you want to do business with, that you would then ask them to provide an RFP. I totally support what Member Schaefer says. We have people who understand the work that we need done. They totally understand the current application as it works and the requirements that we have. So I see no reason to spend almost $2,500 to have somebody tell us what to do when we already know what we can do.
Okay, thank you. Member Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two things in mind. The first is procedurally, can this,
I'm sorry, Member Gordon, you became muted. Could you repeat that, please?
thank you. I don't know how that happened, but here, we'll try it again. Can this committee amend a contract on the fly? Secondly, if you, even assuming the answer to that is yes, would we be better off if we are inclined to go this way? And I'm leaning to supporting what the member Schaefer has proposed. But would we be better off if we were to convey our sentiments on this, convey our thoughts and preferences on this to Mr. Kalin, and basically redraft the contract and bring it back?
Well, I don't have a response, an answer to that. I think, I would think that we could present to our board from this committee any kind of contract that we wanted, and then we could ask staff to redraft it. But I'm going to ask Mr. Nelson for his opinion as well.
Well, I think I share Mr. Gordon's concern. I don't think it will be a problem, but we don't have an agreement that the other side has agreed to at this point. So if we're amending it and changing it, I think it probably needs to go back to Mr. Kalin. I'll have him make the corrections if the committee directs, to make these adjustments, and then I can bring that forward at the county board.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? If not, I'm going to call, I'm sorry, Member Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to be sure that what Mr. Nelson just suggested is acceptable to Member Schaefer and to Member Metzger, who seconded. Is this, do we regard this as the appropriate way to go? That's all. That's all. I just want to be sure.
Anyone like to respond? Member Schaefer.
Well, if Mr. Kalin then says okay, then okay. And if he doesn't, I have more questions would come out after that, kind of thing. So and the thing is that I'll just leave it at that. I just want to stop at the RFI.
Thank you. Member Metzger, do you have anything to say? Okay, I'm going to call a question then. Member Metzger, you weren't here, but we're required to have a roll call vote by the Senate. I explained that prior to the meeting, so you'll know. And I'm going to call the question. Thank you, Member Nelson. And Chair will vote.
So this is the motion to amend.
This is a motion to amend the item as we have in the records with the wording.
Yeah,
Okay.
4AC1.
Yeah.
Lori Woolrap,
Aye.
Josh Burnett,
Yes, aye.
William Catherine Metzger,
Yes.
Susan Schaefer,
Yes.
James Solder,
Yes.
John McIntyre,
Aye.
Judge Kaisley, I'll check with you one more time.
He's still blank, so we'll just have to mark him as a note as a
So,
present
yeah, present, but
at the current time until he says something. I don't know what else to do.
I don't either.
Okay, what do we have?
So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 9 that said yes, so it carries.
7 yes vote, the amendment carries. Now we're back to the original motion as amended, and we'll call a roll for vote.
Lori Woolrab,
Aye.
Josh Barnett.
Aye.
I'm gonna skip William Kaisley for right now because I don't see him on there. George Gordon,
Aye.
Catherine Metzger,
Aye.
Susan Schaefer,
Yes.
James Solner,
Aye.
John McIntyre.
Aye. So we have 7 ayes and 1 present. Motion's carried. Member Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm assuming that since we have now passed the amended version, that this will go to the board, and following that, we will have to go back to Mr. Kalin and ensure that he's okay with it. Is that correct?
That's correct. As I understand it, would be like any
Thank you.
2 parties have to have 2 parties to sign a contract. So
Yeah.
I'm sure if he doesn't, he'll come back to the committee with a response, and then they'll have to redraw from there or come back to us again. Okay, Member Schaefer, thank you.
Would this be a stand-up item instead of waiting another month before it would happen?
Could possibly be. We'll see if we can get in contact with Mr. Kalin. Okay? All right, anyone else? Let me move on to item B, Behavioral Health Coordinating Council Supervisors Unit. D1 requests approval of a resolution amending the funded full-time equivalent position resolution for fiscal year 2020 Fund 007, found on pages 10 and 11. Is there a motion to approve? It's a motion by Member Schaefer. Is there a second? Second by Member Gordon. Any comments, discussion, or questions? Member Woolrab.
Can I get some kind of an estimate on what the cost savings would be for maybe a year in switching this position from one that's not an employee to an in-house employee?
Yes, member, I'll call on Ms. Malat. Are you on with us?
I am.
Would you like to respond?
Yes. So as budgeted and supplied in the document with allocating for 4 full-time positions and 2 .25 positions, and I apologize because I am having internet connectivity issues, so I can't pull up the document that has my exact figure. But based on memory, I believe the annual cost savings with those positions comes out to around $55,000. So
Does that, and I think you were trying to do an apples to apples comparison. I think I read somewhere essentially in this document. Does that include the in-house benefits and the in-house, taking into account the in-house benefits and the in-house administrative charges, or that I would assume would be applied to our own position?
yes, it does include all of the applicable benefits. And one of the other pieces of this is that the supervisor for this is already, their role actually does not change. They've already been allocating time. So the county employed supervisor has already been doing the scheduling, maintaining that contact, which is largely what the contractual supervisor piece had been or was intended to be. So we've already been essentially, that person is in that role regardless because they supervise other staff also. But it doesn't change what they've already been doing.
Because I just should express, I guess, I have a little concern about bringing on actual county positions at this point it's a little hard at this point to see what our revenue stream is going to be in the next, let's say, year. And I'm not sure that it's 100% fair to do this to people, but do you have any comments along those lines that you'd like to make, or maybe some other members do?
Sure. Well, I can comment first and identify that one piece of this is that we have not been fully staffed for this particular position with the contractor. And so as it stands right now, we are actually, one of the contracted positions is actually leaving at the end of the month because they completed nursing school and have a nursing position that they're taking. And so we are down to less than 2 FTEs for this position. And so the number of positions that it would impact is less than the number that we need to hire for. But on an annual basis, we will still be saving over $55,000 by bringing it in-house.
Anyone else? If not, I'll go ahead and call the question for item D1. To request approval of resolution amending the funded full-time equivalent position. Roy?
Lori Woolrab,
I
Aye.
will.
Josh Barnett.
Aye.
Do you want me to try? I didn't see him anymore on there. Okay. George Gordon,
Yes.
Catherine Metzger,
Yes.
Susan Schaefer,
Yes.
James Fuller,
Yes.
John McIntyre.
Yes, we have 7 yes, 0 no's. Motion has carried. Let the record show member Kaylee has been disconnected right at 4:45, and we'll move on. Maybe you'll come back and join us. Let's move on with the meeting and let's go to Part B, Finance Committee Chair, Member Solder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance has nothing to offer today for action items. We'll have some items to present to the board. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Health Committee report, Chair Member Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Health Committee has no items today for Executive Committee. However, we will have items next week for the board. I'll answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. On item D will be Land Use and Development Committee, Vice Chair Member Woolrab.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Land Use and Development Committee has no items for today, but we will have an item to be presented to the full board.
All right, thank you. Move on to Metal Transportation Committee report. We have 1 item for action. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, jurisdictional transfer on pages 15 through 22 at Seminary Street in Downs. I need a motion to get on the floor for discussion. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Member Barnett and second by Member Metzger. Comments, questions, or discussion? Let me make a few comments. This is coming from transportation, and it is an agreement between the county and the city of Downs. The county is to make improvements on Seminary Street off US 150 up to Interstate 74. And at that time, then the transfer would be jurisdictional for the agreement would be for the village of Downs to take over that ownership and operation and provide maintenance for that facility street within the city limits. Member Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since the Transportation Committee met, there's been some questions about the village's plans for the section. Actually, Chairman Kaisley was going to actually propose to send it back to Transportation Committee for more discussion. He's not here, obviously, so I would like to do that. I'd like to refer it back to Transportation Committee. There's a disagreement on whether they are going to restrict ag traffic and truck traffic through that section of town. And so again, I think it needs to have a little more discussion at Transportation Committee, and I would like to make that motion.
I understand. So there's a motion to send this back to committee. Is there a second? Member Gordon will second this motion. Any other comments or questions? Member Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My comment is not directly germane to Member Soldner's motion, but assuming this comes back to us in the form that we're seeing it here, are there 3 separate votes to be taken on E1A, 1, 2, and 3, or is that a package deal? Looks to me like it might be considered 3, especially with roll call required. I'm sorry to throw that in.
Yeah, my interpretation was it was a package deal. Yes.
Thank you.
I'll tell you, there's some discussion that needs to go on. People need to get back to the table on this, partially because once this becomes considered part of the Village of Downs jurisdiction, it's going right through, if you're familiar with this, it's going right through the downtown area. There's been a lot of heavy traffic and truck traffic there, and there could be even some changes that the village board wants for weight limits, et cetera. And so I think there's some things that need to be worked out with farm equipment because there doesn't seem to be other possible routes. And so I think it is good that it goes back to committee and that both parties, include our county highway department and the village, sit down and work through this and come to some common ground. Member Solar, did you have your hand up?
Yes, actually, I did speak to the mayor. He assured me that there was no plan to restrict ag traffic, but there was a possibility they would try and restrict truck traffic.
Yeah.
My concern is nowadays, a lot of farmers use semi trucks, which are really no different than a commercial semi. And so I'm not sure that there's a decision made on whether that kind of vehicle will be restricted. And if that's the case, I'm going to oppose it. There's also some discussion about possibly doing a roundabout, I believe is what they call it, possibly there. And if they do that, that will also cause a problem with ag traffic. So I think, again, it's better to send it back to transportation so they can iron out those issues. And so that's why I'm recommending that. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions or discussion? If not, we'll take a roll call vote. This is to send this back to our Transportation Committee for further action. I will vote.
Okay.
Chairman.
Lori Woolrab,
Aye.
Josh Barnett,
Aye.
still don't see William Casey, George Gordon,
Aye.
Catherine,
Yes.
Susan Schaefer,
Yes.
Jane Solar,
Yes.
John McIntyre.
Yes, so we have 7 yes votes and 0 no votes, and the motion to send back to committee is approved. And we'll move on. Nothing else for transportation. You can see there's some other items for information presented in our packet. And we'll move on now to Property Committee, Chairman Barnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That July was a light month for Property Committee. We have no items for action to present to exec or to the full board this month, but I'd be happy to answer any questions from the Executive Committee.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on to item G, Justice Committee report from Chairman Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Justice Committee brings 2 items for action to the Executive Committee this afternoon. Item G1A, request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County fiscal year 2020 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance for the Children's Advocacy Center, CAC, pages 23 through 25, and I'll move that.
Motion by Chairman Gordon. Is there a second? Second by Member Woolrab. Comments, questions, or discussion? If none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Lori Woolrab,
Aye.
Josh Barnett,
Aye.
George Gordon,
Aye.
Catherine Metzger,
Yes.
Susan Schaefer,
Yes.
Jim Solner,
Yes.
John McIntyre.
Yes. So we have 7 yes votes, 0 no votes, and item G1A is approved. Member Gordon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item G1B, request approval of an intergovernmental agreement by and between the County of McLean, the McLean County Sheriff, and the Bloomington Normal Airport Authority, pages 26 through 28 in our packets, and I'll move that.
Motion by Chairman Gordon. Is there a second? Second by Member Schaefer. Comments, questions, or discussion? If none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Lori Woolrab,
Aye.
Josh Barnett,
Aye.
George Gordon,
Aye.
Catherine Metzger,
Yes.
Susan Schaefer,
Yes.
James Solner,
Yes.
John McIntyre.
Aye. We have 7 yes votes,
Yes, sir.
0 no votes, and the motion has carried.
We
Member
have no
Gordon?
other items to bring before the executive committee meeting this afternoon. 2 items will be going to the full county board meeting next week. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, sir. We'll move on to the report of the county administrator, Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chairman. Under item H1A, I do have one item to present for action, which is request approval of critical hire requests. Those can be found on pages 29 and 30 of your packet.
Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Member Solner. Is there a second? Member Gordon. Second by Member Gordon. Comments or questions? If none, we'll have a roll call vote. Chair will vote.
Lori Woolrab,
Aye.
Josh Barnett,
Aye.
George Gordon,
Aye.
Catherine Metzger,
Yes.
Susan Schaefer,
Yes.
Jim Solner,
Yes.
John McIntyre.
Yes.
7 again.
We have 7 yes votes, 0 no votes, and the motion is carried. Back to you, Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chairman. The only other item I have to present to the membership is on page 31. It is our recent employment activity report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Member Barnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if State's Attorney Knapp is in the room or not. I was just curious if there was a general timeline for the replacement of the first assistant civil state's attorney within the administrator's office.
Mr. Knapp is here.
Just tell me.
He already started, sir.
Oh, great.
So that's great news.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Do you have anything else?
I do not, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you. With the committee's permission, I'd like to skip number 5, other business, and come back to it, and go on to recommend the payment of bills and transfers. And the first thing we need to vote on are the transfers, which are on page 32 on the back of your packet. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Member Barnett. Is there a second? Second by Member Woolrab. Any comments? Questions? If not, we'll take a roll call vote.
Lori Woolrab,
Aye.
Josh Barnett,
Aye.
George Gordon,
Aye.
Catherine Metzger,
Yes.
Susan Schaefer,
Yes.
Jim Solner,
Yes.
John McIntyre,
Aye.
and I see.
Yes.
Judge Leslie, you're back?
Yes.
Back and we
Okay,
8 yes votes and 0 no votes.
thank you.
Motion has carried. Next item I have are payment of the bills, and we have bills from the Regional Planning Commission, General Fund, Shared Sales Tax, and Veteran Assistance. And the regional planning bill is $5,908.81. The other total is $444,930.90, and these are public records. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by member Schaefer, second by member Solner, and we'll take a roll call vote. Any comments or discussion? Member Worab?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I continue to notice that the auditor, it doesn't any longer post these, the bills paid on her portion of the website. The last time she had put that out there was September of 19. So I would ask that if she doesn't do it, that maybe those now become included in the notes from our meetings, because they're just nowhere that either the committee, other board members, or the public that I know of can see that. Thank you.
Duly noted, and we'll ask the staff to ask that very question. Thank you. Anyone else? So we need a roll call vote on payment of bills.
Yes, sir. Lori Woolrab,
Aye.
Josh Barnett,
Aye.
William Casely,
Aye.
George Gordon,
Aye.
Catherine Metzger,
Yes.
Susan Schaefer,
Yes.
Jim Solner,
Yes.
Jeff McIntyre.
Yes. So we have 8 yes votes.
Yes, sir.
0 no votes, and the bills, payment of the bills, the motion has carried. Now we'll go back to other business. And what I have for you, as promised, was a discussion about where we go for our meetings in August. I know this has been something that everybody has different opinions and concern about. I'm hoping that we can try to work together on this and have some kind of a consensus or some direction that we can follow as members of this executive committee. With your permission, I'd like to kind of walk through a proposal just to get something out for discussion as well. And so let me kind of walk through this with your patience for a minute. I have been over room 400. My proposal would be is that we can begin to have committee meetings only in person, and that our full board meetings would be virtual, as we have done in the past. I took the tape measure over, walked around. If you can envision with me and try to develop a plan, and there is room with the quadrangle of tables all around together, where there is room for everyone on a committee to have 2 seats between them, which is more than 6 feet. The staff would sit back up where I usually sit during our full board meetings, and they would have more than 6 feet between them. And that is more than 6 feet between the people.
It's gone again.
Up at the desk and on the floor. I had moved the press tables to where if there was more than one person from the press, they would be clear at the far ends of 2 tables where the press usually sit, and that would be 8 to 10 feet. We would move a podium over where it would be totally out away from everyone, over in the far corner, more towards the gallery, but far corner, where anybody that was an elected official that was presenting to a committee could come up and stand and answer questions there. Now, to take this further, my recommendation would be that everyone wear masks into the building and into their seats and out of the building, that we would have somebody that would be in charge of, including me if it's necessary, spraying and keeping the elevator buttons and everything clean so there's nothing to be touched. Outside doors would be open. Nothing would have to be touched there, including room 400. When people sit down, this is my suggestion, that once they are at their own separate table and they have distance, that would be optional whether they wanted to take their mask off to talk or leave it on. And that would be optional as well. And
It's gone again.
And that one member recommended, and I could recommend that we had a hand sanitizer and wipes at each table to be sure that the tables were cleaned prior to the meeting, after the meeting, and hand sanitizer available. I would also recommend, as part of this plan, that if someone was uncomfortable with attending, that as long as there was a quorum of 4 members present, and I've had this looked at, we could have remote call in and have people up to 3 that could call in and participate. Obviously, it wouldn't be video, but they could participate in the meeting as well, and we could go ahead and conduct the meeting. That seems to be consistent with our code 2020 C2A. Had a chance to do a little research on that with the state code as well. And so that is possible to do that with our current rules. I think the only other thing that I would see, that would be my proposal, that we try it a month and see how that would work out. And I'd be open for suggestions or answer any questions that you might have. I will tell you that one reason I think it's necessary is because we do have a need to go into executive session, and it seems impossible for us to have any kind of semblance of security, privacy in executive session with a virtual type of a system. And so for that reason, I think I would promote trying this as well, at least getting through the month. I know this committee really needs to be in executive session for evaluation of our county administrator's annual review, and we haven't been able to do that. So that would be one thing, just for an example. So I hope that was somewhat clear. I wonder if there's if you have anything, questions or suggestions for me, or you think that this would be enough of a consensus that we could try this for a month and see how. Member Solomon.
Do we have the ability to require members of the public to wear masks at those meetings?
It's a public building. We don't have the ability. We would ask everyone's cooperation to do so.
Okay.
There's nothing in the state guidelines that say we can require that like a private enterprise could, private entity. Member Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little puzzled already, not at Member Solder's question. My understanding is that the city of Bloomington does require masks. First and foremost, is that correct? That the city of Bloomington offices, if someone's in those offices,
I don't know that I have an official answer to that. I've heard that that they have said that, but I don't know if that's in actuality or if it's true, or whether they have that as a part of official action from the Bloomington City Council. I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
Is there any, was it may not have come through City Council. Did the city manager do that?
Does anyone know?
I don't have any information to say that the city manager decreed that every City of Bloomington employee has to wear a mask at all times. And if they do, that would also apply to this very building. And it's certainly, I've not been made aware in my conversations about this building that they also would wish for McLean County government employees to do the same, so that the actions are congruent, if that makes any sense. I do know that they've limited a lot of their employee presence in any of their buildings. I can certainly check in with Mr. Gleason and see if that is something that he has created in an order, but I haven't been made aware of such.
My response, Member Gordon, would be that that I would certainly hope that everybody would feel a responsibility to other board members, at least to come in and out of the building where they're around anyone with a mask on. That's why I thought I'd leave it optional. Once they were sitting at a table and there was no one around, that they could, that if a person said they felt uncomfortable, do that. The other option would be, and if we could all come to an agreement, say if somebody doesn't want to wear a mask, then they can just participate remotely. And that's, I obviously, hopefully that no one would challenge that. I hope that we could all work together on this as board members, and we feel that they have a responsibility to other board members. Member Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am sure I'm not the only committee chair who has done this. I basically took an informal poll of members of the Justice Committee, 7 members.
Mm-hmm.
5 affirmed that they would wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
The 6th reply that I got said, I will comply with all protocols and recommendations. I've gotten back to that member to say, okay, does that mean for sure that you're going to be wearing a mask? Haven't heard back. Okay. And the 7th member said, probably not. Now, where that leaves us, I don't know. I have a lot of concerns about this, as I think you know. We all do. But I think that if there is any legal basis for us to require the wearing of a mask, personally, I would like to see us do that, because I think it vastly increases the safety of all concerned. As you well know, I don't wear a mask to protect me anywhere near as much as I wear a mask to protect you.
Yes.
And there are some data that I could forward to you, to members of the executive committee. It's a quick model, if you will, a figure that was printed. My wife saw it on Facebook, and it's hard to block and copy that, but I translated it into an email. And if a COVID-19 patient or someone who is a carrier, not even necessarily symptomatic, is not wearing the mask and somebody else is, there's a 70% chance of transmission. If a COVID carrier is wearing a mask and somebody else isn't, the probability of transmission is only 15%. And if both are masked, it's 1.5%. So that the wearing of a mask is a great protection. And in fact, it's a crucial protection for everybody else within, I don't know how many feet. We know that the standard has been 6 feet. I've seen some data that suggests it should be more than that, but it hasn't gone to that officially. So I think the wearing of a mask is a very, very critical element in how we come down on this.
Thank you. Other comments? Member Schaefer.
Yeah, I have a comment and then a question. I'm a member of the Board of Health because of being the chair of the Health Committee. I'm on the Board of Health. And we, last week on Wednesday, had a meeting in person for over 2 hours. Everyone in that room, there were probably about 20 to 22 people in that room, all had their masks on, and they left them on even when they were talking. And it was challenging because that room does not have the microphones that we have in our boardroom. So I think that was the biggest challenge that we had, was hearing everyone clearly, even though they left their masks on to talk. And so there's less transmission that way if someone should happen to be a carrier. I am one of those people that hasn't really gone out much. I don't do outside dining. I don't do inside dining. I go to the grocery store at the most once every 2 to 3 weeks. And so I'm pretty cautious as to what I do. And I went into that meeting and I felt comfortable for over 2 hours. Now, hopefully our meetings will not, our committee meetings won't last that long, although there are some that do because of the discussion. One thing that I observed at that Board of Health meeting was that I thought the meeting went better. The conversations went better. And as opposed to meeting in this format. when you're trying to make decisions, when you're trying to get information, and that conversation, I think, flows much better in person. As what Chairman McIntyre said about executive session, whether it be reviewing, the administrator's annual review, collective bargaining, other personnel issues, litigation, we are not doing our jobs if we cannot go into executive session when necessary. And it's been okay for now, and we've managed a few of the things that we should have gone into executive session for, that we managed to do that outside of that realm, but I don't think that that's a viable option for others, other issues that will arise for executive session. And it's not documented or anything like that. So I think that is as a problem. So I would support meeting in committees only. And then meeting full board could be virtual, because we usually do most of the work in committees, obviously. The question I have is that when the GA met in May, they required all the GA members to sign an agreement and had the rules of what they could do, and that they had to wear a face covering, and they had to have, obviously they had been tested and stuff like that, but they had very strict rules on that. And can we create a rule for us to do that in those committee meetings? A very narrow rule that would say, if you are going to attend this meeting as a member, then you will do this. And I don't know if that's something legally we can do. I don't know if Mr. Knapp has researched that, but that is my question, because I would strongly suggest, and we have to learn how to live with this. We cannot indefinitely, if you want to wait till there's a vaccine to meet in person, it may never happen. We can't govern that way. We can't lead that way. So I think we have to figure out how to live with this to minimize our risks. And so if Mr. Knapp is in the room to answer that question that I had, and if he's not, hopefully somebody else can. Thank you.
You want to come up? While Mr. Knapp is coming up, let me tell you my reasoning for having virtual full meeting is just so we didn't have a question about the number of people in room 400 for a full meeting, in case there would happen to be a large attendance sometimes. And the chairs are spaced out now where there are 6 feet apart. So it was only going to accommodate, and obviously we would want to have less than 50 anyway. So I'm sorry.
No, I think it would be, problematic for the board to try and pass a rule. Again, the board is a Dillon's rule entity. You only have the authority granted you by the state legislature. The state legislature represents a sovereign entity. They have more authority than the county board does. So under which of their rules they made that rule, and I know they expelled Representative Bailey for not following it. I'm unsure, but under our rules, I don't see an avenue to do that. I will say, now it's different because the court has its own authority. These are similar rules to what has been in place in the courthouse, and the court and the sheriff certainly can expel people who don't follow the court's rules. So exactly what Chairman McIntyre explained has been followed pretty well over at the Law and Justice Center. And we've had a lot of people through that. So Member Schaefer, I'm unaware of, I remember, and if we go back to the last time this body that I can remember tried to sanction a board member for conduct and remove them from committees, that was incredibly problematic. Did it get done? Ultimately, it did get done. It was a heck of a process, though. So,
may I, Member Woolrath, if you permit me to say a few words, and I'll call on you, please. I would like the consensus of this committee for us to try this. I'll be happy to write it up with an option that if someone does not agree, There are two options, okay? Either that or I write up a resolution for our board to vote on it, at the full board, just like I presented. Or that if we can take action here, or we can't take action, but resolution that we try this with the option, in fact, that if there is someone who, hopefully we would not have that problem, that everybody would agree, participate, and if they didn't want to, they could say they could call in. And then we could try it that way. Remember, we're talking committee meetings, not full board here at the same time. Sorry, remember where we're at?
I just wanted to, well, a couple things, but at the moment, I want to pursue Mr. Knapp's comments a little bit and maybe have him come back. It would seem to me that our rules allow for us to make rules of decorum. We do that and we expect people to follow those. And I think you just said that whenever that was, that somebody was removed, that it was possible. So I guess I would ask you why we couldn't, under our rules committee, make such a rule for people to wear a mask, understanding that it would be, in a sense, a rule of decorum, and why we couldn't do that.
That would be the best shot that you had to do that. But what was found with the other board member that was removed from the ability to vote from committees, they couldn't remove their ability to vote in the full board, and they couldn't prohibit that member from attending meetings. So, and that was a much more serious issue than decorum for people who remember that. So we could try. We absolutely could try. And as Chairman McIntyre said, I'd be happy to write it up as a rule of decorum. If it passes, it passes. If we try to expel somebody and they don't leave as Representative Bailey did, that becomes a little problematic. But we could always try. I like the idea of decorum. I never thought in my wildest dreams, imaginations as chairman of this board that I would ever come up with anything that had to do with decorum about wearing a mask. But I'm glad that it's come up. I would support that if you feel comfortable with it. Again, I want us all to work together on this and come to a decision which we can all support and participate in. But I think we all have to remember the ultimate thing here is the safety of our board members and the health and welfare as well.
What happens under your proposal with the members of the public? And, what if we get, as occasionally, not often with our committees where we get quite a few people who want to come in person to our meeting, and what is the actual limit on that room? And how would we handle it if people wanted to come and we were at the limit?
Well, it'd have to be 50%. So, it is set up now. I could run over and count, but I'd say we'd have to make a limit on capacity. And if that's the case, then we would use this room. I'm in 404 now with obviously public viewing screens available so that they could watch and tune in to the meeting as members of the public. And even though, and that was a hurdle the courts had to cross, because court proceedings are public proceedings, but they're not unlimited attendance. So they came up with a process by which almost first come, first serve. They knew how many people could be in the actual courtrooms that we're using for public trials, and then this would be similar in that we would have room for so many in the county boardroom. We would also have room for overflow in 404 here, and probably, depending on how many we thought would come, if we need to, we could use the community room or something downstairs where people could watch in real time as the meeting's going and participate that way. So very similar hurdle that the courts worked through and seemed to work pretty well.
And can I just get further clarification on why this format doesn't work for closed meetings or closed sessions?
One, your rules don't allow for it. Your rules dictate that you have to have it only allows, it doesn't allow for remote attendance for any closed meeting, only for open meetings. And two, I think that comes directly from the Open Meetings Act, but I'd have to check that. But your rules certainly don't allow for it. And then the question becomes, how do we verify who has access to the recordings? We have a duty to keep the recordings private. We have a duty to keep a verbatim transcript until we can get minutes approved. And how do we know? I mean, there's just security concerns that are raised of who's online and who's in any given room. So ultimately, it's OMA and the county board rules.
Well, it would just seem to me that we could certainly change our own rules if the committee, the rules committee wanted to do that. And then I guess I would push to say, to continue to stream these meetings, and there must be, I mean, I think I would like to know more about the security or the insecurity, as you seem to put it, of that for a closed session and how that could be done. I mean, just.
Well, that's, how many people do you have in the room with you right now? I'm responding to your question, Member Woolver, about one way it can't be done. Because no one would know. I'm not saying you personally, I mean anybody, somebody could be sitting in a public place and participating in that. It's just impossible to really provide security in a technological standpoint, from a standpoint that for such a thing as a closed session. Any more comments? I'm flexible to work this. I'm happy to push this and rank this up as a resolution for decorum. I'm very happy as chairman to talk to the rest of our board members and get an agreement with them. I think if we have the options where somebody could call in, and that's part of our rules, and it's been interpreted that way as part of a health crisis in this case, that we can do that and we can go ahead and conduct business. And we can come back and revisit it in a month if we feel that's not working. But I think it will. Member Barnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am comfortable with the proposal as it's been presented from you to have the committee meetings in room 400, as long as we are properly spread out as you have proposed. And to follow up on Member Woolrap's thought about the requirement in the rules of face masks, I mean, I certainly would be interested in that and looking into if there's a way that could be done. If you're properly social distanced from someone, if it's 6 or 10 feet, some people are saying now, whatever that might be, I do think it's up to the individual person if they're comfortable wearing a mask or not, but the possibility of having someone come in and just, sort of flippantly say, I'm not wearing a mask and you can't make me wear one. I mean, that does cause me some concern. Going to the grocery store, I do see nearly everyone wearing a mask. So I would hope, especially our own members, would be respectful of one another and individual health concerns that might exist. But if we have a meeting in August, we try this out. If we do find that maybe we need to look at upping things a notch and making that a requirement of some kind, then I would be supportive of looking into that and pursuing it.
If this committee so choose, I will even call a meeting of the Rules Committee and bring it back to stand up. If that is something that's possible. We're running short of time here on this, but whatever it takes, I will do if I can get a consensus from this committee. Member Matthews.
I certainly support having on-site meetings for not only our members of the board or the committees, but also I think it's critical to allow our constituents to attend. I mean, obviously, we would like them to do not only social distance, but also a mask. But our township did the same thing. We have a couple of members who are at risk, and so we kept the option of a virtual meeting for them, but the remaining members met at our township building so our constituents could attend. There's a bit of a concern and intimidation with these online meetings that I don't think really allow our constituents to participate or be there. And so I certainly support it, and whatever we can do to make it happen, I think we need to do that.
Okay, Member Woolrab?
Chair, I happened to notice just the other day, and I didn't take this count for the other committees, but I noticed that on the Judiciary Committee that we had, the Justice Committee, that there were almost 200 people of the public or 200 people that viewed the meeting through Facebook or through the other way you can do it. And so to say that people, I mean, I think we're getting better attendance this way than we are when people can and had ever came in public, in person. So I guess I just don't buy that. And I feel that it's someone potentially at risk myself, that's a discriminatory sort of stance to take, that it's my responsibility to opt out of the meeting so that I can only be not even viewed visually, but I'd have to only be on a phone line, where I think it should actually be the people who refuse to wear masks should be the people who should opt out of the meeting, especially if we're not going to have video for it. Why can't we just continue to stream these meetings as they are? They're working. They seem to work perfectly well, in my opinion. But I think we're putting us, despite whatever happened at the Health Committee or the Health Department, we're putting ourselves at risk. We're putting all of ourselves at risk, and therefore we're putting the entire community at risk.
Member Metzger?
Lori, Member Woolrab, I assumed we were going to continue to have online for those members and for the public who are not capable or wanting or at risk, to make those choices. So I apologize if you misunderstood my comment.
Actually, I was responding to what I thought the chair had said concerning people who didn't want to be at the physical meeting being able to be on the phone line as we have done it in the past. So if we could make an adjustment where we could be hybrid like that, with partially video and audio, I may be more amenable to doing it.
Okay, I can check into that. That's all I can tell you. It's very difficult, I'm going to guess, right, to do something like that. We can look into it. Right now, I need to move forward with this. I can prepare a resolution to bring to the full board for a vote, which is our rule that any member can do with a proposal. Or I can move forward with your executive committee consensus to try this for a month. And I'll go either way with it. I'm open to whatever the situation is, but videoing our committees in that room would take some working out to do. Primarily, that's another issue that we'd have to deal with next month or prior to that, okay, with staff, and also with an extension as far as what we're doing with paying to have this done. So we'd have to work that out. Is anybody else? Member Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is it's a fine detailed technical question, but it may matter. So I at least want to ask it for the record. I have seen it said that better ventilated enclosed spaces are safer spaces to be in. What's the story on that as far as 400, particularly room 400 for committee meetings, if that's the direction we want to go?
As you can see on the screen, we invited our health department director, Ms. Jessica McLean, to join us. And if we could, I'd like to refer to her to see any comments about the rooms and ventilation and riding in the elevator and so on. Ms. McKnight, are you available?
I am, yes. So I guess right now, the understanding of what we're hearing about the virus being airborne, when we talk about viruses being airborne, that's meaning that they hang out in the air for some time after somebody coughs, sneezes, or is talking and expelling that virus, those droplets. And with COVID-19, the SARS-CoV-2 virus is so new that CDC, WHO, they're learning more about it every day. But preliminary evidence that WHO is seeing is that this SARS-CoV-2 virus is not airborne in the same sense as something like tuberculosis or measles or chickenpox, where they can move through a building or through those HVAC systems. What we're seeing is growing evidence about micro droplets. So possible transmission in close quarters, like Chairman was saying about elevators. I would be more concerned in a closed space like that than I would a larger building, even if it is that HVAC system. So I know that's hopefully that cleared up a little bit.
Do you have an opinion about ventilation in the rooms?
Again, they're studying that a lot right now, but as far as what we've been told from Illinois Department of Public Health, we're looking at the micro droplets, not necessarily about the virus being airborne so much. So there'll be more information about that to come. Illinois Department of Public Health and CDC are working together to study that. We would really need more evidence to say if it is airborne, in fact. But obviously, if you're looking at a larger space, again, with people that are socially distanced, wearing masks, that all decreases your risk.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Ms. McKnight. Member Woolrab.
I'd like to ask Ms. McKnight about what her comments concerning community spread and how that might relate to us in a meeting or especially in a meeting where we have members of the committee or members of the public who are not wearing masks.
Sure, yeah, so community spread really just means that we have people who have COVID that do not know where they have contracted it. And so from really early on with this virus, we've said that any person that you are interacting with could potentially have COVID, especially because asymptomatic transmission, or 2 days prior to developing symptoms, you can spread the virus. So that's why those measures of socially distancing yourself, wearing your mask, because the mask is really important for preventing that droplet and, again, protecting the other people in the room. So spreading out those droplets, they're not as likely to travel more than 3 to 6 feet. So that's why the 6 feet distance is important.
Anyone else? Well, I think that, yeah, Member Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Like all of us, I've done a lot of thinking about this, and my concern my concerns are pretty broad, as you may have already gathered. There are members of this board who fall into the most vulnerable demographic, age-wise. Beyond that, and I don't know how old very many people are on this board. I think a lot of us are, well, shall we say, over 50. Once you start getting over 60, it gets to be a little bit trickier. But it's not just us, and it's not just members of the public, it's members of our family, our families. It's none of my business, and I'm not asking who has underlying medical conditions. You're going to find, if you haven't already realized this, and I'm sure you have, in the way I'm thinking about this and the way I'm thinking about responding to the virus. My wife and I take our stand close to what Member Schaefer said. We don't go out much, and you're listening to one of the, in terms of dealing with the virus, the guy who's talking at you is one of the most conservative people you're going to encounter. Whether the word conservative and Gordon go together, that's a whole different issue. But on this matter, all seriousness, on this matter, I am about as conservative as you're going to find. And I'm very concerned about the risks. Wearing masks makes a big difference. Ms. McKnight just referred to that. We've seen lots of information about that. Some apparently, for whatever reason, choose to disregard that information. I find that very difficult to understand because, again, it's not about the mask wearer, it's about the people they're with. If the risks are somehow manageable, that sounds good, and I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means for me or for my family or for you and your families. I would really want to see us require masks. And I'm not all that certain that I would support even going to in-person meetings for committees. It's that critical to me. And I think the danger is that great. I'm not an epidemiologist. Never wanted to be. And it's very uncomfortable for me to say what I'm saying. But I'm very concerned about the risks we might be taking.
Well, my proposal left options for people to participate in both aspects. I don't know that there is an answer that's good for all. I was asking for some kind of consensus here on whether to move forward. I think for just, save time, I don't know that we're all going to come to agreement. I'm going to try to put something together for us to, if nothing else, I'll bring it to the board as a resolution to discuss with options to participate. Or if you'd like, we can do it under the aspect of chairman and decorum. We worked down here over 20 straight days, weekends and all, when this virus first hit. I'm sitting here in a room with 8 or 9 people. I feel comfortable as long as I'm here. I'm not out walking around the room talking with people. I do have a mask, which I wore in here. I wear in and out of the building and into my office. I think it's possible. And I know it is, again, about risk. We don't go out that much either. And I am conservative. I know you know that. So there is no total answer to this, I think. I was wanting to see if there was a consensus of where to go. I don't know that the chairman of this board has the authority other than if there's a vote taken on it. I'll be happy to do that if you want to go that route. I do want to be sure that we're all working together on this, and that whatever is decided, that everybody on this board will ethically and morally participate in thinking about what's best for the health and safety of everybody. So I don't have any more to say about it this time, other than I'm going to look into it. I might, unless you have other direction for me as a group, I am going to go ahead and try to move into in-person committee meetings with some options that I think are workable, like I presented. I don't have a camera to walk over there and walk around the room about where people from the public will sit, but if I could, I would show you the distances and the chairs, etc. So as chairman, that's my direction. If there's an overwhelming majority not to do that, come next Tuesday, fine. Or if you want to direct me to try to have a rules meeting on this and put it in our rules, I'm okay with that too. I'll be happy to do that too. And I know we can sit here and talk about it forever, but that's the direction I feel we should go. If not, I understand. I've got 2 hands up here. Let's go with Member Schaefer and then Member Woolrab. Okay, and then we'll go from there.
I just wanted a clarification, because when you were talking about a rules committee meeting or a rules, change versus a resolution, could you not put that decorum part in the resolution and not kind of be a rule, so we wouldn't have to go to have a rules change? I'm just trying to clarify which way you would go on that, because I support whatever.
As far as I know, my interpretation would be that we could do that with a resolution. I'll have to ask staff for sure, be sure it doesn't have to come out of rules. But if it does, it would have to come back to stand up to exec. And we'd have to discuss it again before we went into the full board. But we may have to allot time to do that. And we'd have to do it virtually this month. So that's where we would be. Anyone else? Member Woolrath.
So is the reason that you're trying to get this accomplished by next month because there's something we absolutely have to go into closed session on? And then because my preference would be that it goes through a rules committee so people understand the firmness of wearing a mask and whatever else we need to consider in that, the social distancing and so forth.
Is there a reason? The reason is I think we could conduct better business in committees if we went forward. That's my opinion. And I thought we should maybe give it a try and see how it worked. And that the reason is also because of executive session.
And do we have an executive session we have to have next month?
Yes.
And there's no other way. I guess I keep hearing why we can't do things, but I'm not hearing people looking into how we can do things remotely. People are stopped short of investigating that.
Well, what I did was try to give you a plan of what I thought was how we can.
Well, I understand that, and I appreciate all the attention to the detail that you have proposed, but I still think that there are many members on this board that are at risk, and it just seems we're tempting fate to push it because we have all these reasons why we can't do something rather than trying to find ways that we can do something.
There's an argument for both sides. I don't know that we want to approach that between the two of us or amongst us here. I could say, what, do you go to the grocery store? Maybe you don't. I don't know. You know, there's a lot of arguments that we could say. Have you been out to eat outside? I don't know. But I feel like that's the direction as chairman I would like for us to go. And if it's overwhelming majority not to, that's fine too. Okay. Anybody else? Well, then I'm going to go ahead then and move forward with the resolution. To give everybody time to discuss it. I'm going to check and see if rules needs to meet. I'm going to look at the decorum part of this. I definitely don't think that I want to have people come out from the public that don't follow this. I'm also going to look into some more about the possibility of the building being sure and being open next month, and make a decision from there. And it could be that if you have more input for me, let me know. Okay. Anyone else? If not, I have nothing else for now. Please feel free to contact me, and I'll see about putting something together. And that's the direction I'd like to see us go and try. So, Member Casey, do you have your hand up? Okay. You'll have to unmute.
Yes, I would like for the clerk to show for the record that I am voting yes on all of the items that have been considered today.
You were able to witness that on your screen?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Duly noted. We'll see if that's in the record. Without objection. All right, that's all I have for now. Thank you very much for your participation and working together, and we'll go from there. This meeting's adjourned.